Emotional wounds never truly heal. But what if that lingering pain isn't our enemy, but a hidden guide? A force pointing us toward our deepest truth and the path of inner transformation. As Jung taught through his concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject or deny hold powerful influence over our emotions and experiences. These hidden aspects shape how we react to life, especially in moments of pain. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button now. And don't forget to explore our members area, where we dive deeper into how to understand and transform your emotional wounds. Carl Jung's theory of the shadow invites us to look within with courage and honesty. According to Jung, we all carry a shadow, an unconscious part of our personality where we hide everything we consider unacceptable, shameful, or painful. It's where our fears, traumas, and suppressed emotions live. The most fascinating part is that these rejected aspects remain alive within us, silently influencing our thoughts, reactions, and decisions. Instead of trying to eliminate them, Jung suggests we integrate them, becoming more whole and self-aware. Emotional pain is one of the clearest ways in which the shadow reveals itself. That lingering sadness, constant anger, or inexplicable fear all carry a message. When we try to escape pain, we miss the opportunity to listen to what it's trying to teach us. Jung believed pain is not a punishment but a compass. It points toward the areas of our psyche that need attention, love, and reconnection with our true self. How often do we try to get rid of pain through distractions? We change relationships, throw ourselves into work, consume motivational content, all in an effort not to feel. But by doing this, we move further away from the root of the problem. Jung said, "What you resist persists." The more we ignore our pain, the more it grows and becomes part of our unconscious patterns. It stops being a temporary emotion and becomes a way of life. We repeat stories, attract similar situations, and feel like nothing ever really changes. The invitation here is to see pain not as an obstacle, but as a teacher. Suffering forces us to slow down, to reflect, to step out of autopilot. It's often in moments of crisis that we discover who we truly are, beyond the masks and external expectations. Jung didn't see pain as something to be cured in the traditional sense, but rather as a necessary experience in the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole, authentic self. When we look at our pain with honesty and presence, we begin a deep process of transformation. It's not about erasing suffering, but understanding and integrating it. Pain reveals where we are still disconnected from ourselves, and that's exactly why it's an invitation to reconnect. When we stop resisting and begin to listen, pain is no longer a burden. It becomes a source of strength. That is the true power of the shadow. Not to destroy, but to reveal the light we forgot we had. We live in a society that conditions us to avoid pain at all costs. From a young age, we learn that feeling sadness, anger, or fear is a sign of weakness. So we constantly seek ways to escape these emotions. We turn to therapy, self-help books, throw ourselves into busy routines, or get lost in distractions like social media and entertainment. While these strategies may offer temporary relief, they rarely reach the root of our suffering, and over time, the pain comes back, often even stronger. The problem with conventional approaches is that they often try to fix the individual as if we were broken. Traditional therapy, positive thinking, motivational quotes, all of these can be helpful to a point, but they risk only addressing symptoms, not the deeper cause. Jung warned us about the danger of seeking external solutions for internal problems. According to him, true healing begins when we look inward and face what has been ignored, repressed, or rejected within ourselves. One of the most subtle and cruel mechanisms of the psyche is the cycle of repetition. When we don't understand an emotional wound, we tend to relive it over and over again, as if caught in an invisible loop. We attract the same kinds of relationships, go through the same frustrations, make choices that lead us back to pain. It's as if life, through these repetitions, is trying to show us something we haven't yet been able to see, an unconscious pattern that needs to be integrated. This repetition doesn't happen by accident. According to Jung, the psyche is wise and naturally seeks wholeness. It places us in situations that force us to face what we've denied. In this context, Suffering is not a mistake, but an invitation to consciousness. What we often call bad luck or karma may actually be a deep psychic process pushing us toward inner awakening. But this requires courage. The courage to step out of victimhood and take responsibility for our healing journey. Healing an emotional wound is not a linear, quick, or easy process. It requires patience, presence, and a willingness to feel what we most fear. But when we begin to understand the cycle of suffering and the mechanisms that keep us trapped in it, we create space for real transformation. It's not about healing in the sense of erasing pain, but about learning from it, welcoming it, and allowing it to reveal who we are beyond the suffering. Carl Jung deepened our understanding of the human psyche by revealing that much of our suffering comes from unconscious aspects acting without our awareness. Two of these central elements are the shadow and complexes. The shadow, as we've seen, is made up of everything we repress or reject within ourselves. Complexes, on the other hand, are emotional cores charged with psychic energy, formed by traumatic experiences, limiting beliefs, and painful memories. These complexes have a life of their own and can take control of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When a complex is activated, it's as if we momentarily lose control. We overreact, feel intense emotions, and often can't even explain why afterward. This happens because the complex touches on a deep emotional wound, often connected to the shadow. For example, someone with a rejection complex might interpret any form of criticism as a personal attack, even when that wasn't the intention. The pain is not about the present moment, but about the reactivation of something old and unresolved. The shadow and complexes go hand in hand. While the shadow represents what we hide, complexes are the structures that keep those hidden parts alive and active. Jung shows us that in order to integrate the shadow, we also need to address the complexes that sustain it. Ignoring these mechanisms means living like puppets of our unconscious history, repeating patterns without understanding where they come from. A crucial point is to understand that the psyche, as painful as it may seem, is always trying to protect us. The repetition of patterns, the activation of complexes, and our defense mechanisms, all of these are attempts by the mind to avoid pain. But in doing so, it traps us in the familiar, even when that familiar is suffering. Jung called this the neurotic comfort. We prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar growth. Liberation begins when we have the courage to face these hidden contents with presence and compassion. Self-knowledge is not just a search for peace, but a deep dive into what has been forgotten or denied. When we recognize our complexes and bring the shadow into the light, we reclaim our inner power. Pain ceases to be a prison and becomes a portal, a direct path to authenticity and true emotional freedom. For Jung, true emotional healing does not occur when we eliminate pain, but when we integrate it into our journey of self-discovery. He called this process individuation, a deep path of encountering the true self, where all parts of the psyche, including those that have been rejected, are recognized, welcomed, and integrated. Instead of trying to be better or healed, the invitation is to be whole. Pain, in this context, is no longer seen as a mistake to be fixed, but as a bridge to our completeness. The process of individuation begins with the honest confrontation of what we carry in our unconscious. This includes the shadow, complexes, and repetitive patterns that sustain our emotional wounds. Awareness is the first step. When we become conscious of what hurts, of what we avoid feeling, we initiate an internal movement of transformation. Jung said that nothing changes in a person's life until the unconscious becomes conscious. It is this awakening that allows pain to stop being a silent prison. There are practical tools that Jung suggested to help us on this path of integration. One of them is active imagination, a process of symbolic dialogue with the images of the unconscious, where we can listen to, welcome, and transform the inner voices we usually ignore. Another powerful practice is dream interpretation, as dreams are pure expressions of the unconscious, full of messages and symbols that show us where we are and what we need to integrate. Shadow work, which can include reflective writing, meditation, or therapeutic support, is also essential for recognizing the rejected aspects of ourselves. Interpersonal relationships also play a fundamental role in this process. Jung saw others as mirrors that reflect our own wounds and potential for healing. When we feel anger, jealousy, or resentment toward others, these emotions usually point to something unresolved within us. Instead of blaming or distancing ourselves, we can use these triggers as opportunities to observe what still needs to be seen and embraced in our inner world. Finally, overcoming emotional pain does not mean leaving it behind, but transforming it into wisdom. The process of individuation requires courage, patience, and surrender, but it leads us to a place of deep authenticity. When we embrace our pain with awareness, it becomes an ally, no longer an enemy. It is at this point that true healing happens. Not when we rid ourselves of pain, but when we learn to walk with it as a living part of our story and our essence. True healing, according to Jung, does not consist of eliminating pain, but of understanding and integrating the parts of ourselves that remain in the shadows. Emotional pain, instead of being seen as an obstacle to overcome, reveals itself as an opportunity for growth and transformation. The integration of the shadow and facing emotional wounds is not just a process of personal healing, but a journey toward authenticity. By understanding our wounds, we can, paradoxically, heal them, as awareness is the key that transforms suffering into wisdom. Jung teaches us that pain is not an enemy to be fought, but an ally that shows us where we need to evolve. Instead of fleeing from or denying what we feel, we can look at our emotions with more compassion and courage. This does not mean living without pain, but learning to transform pain into a tool of self-discovery. True transformation does not happen instantly, but through a continuous process of self-acceptance and growth. The path of individuation is an ongoing and often challenging process, but it is this process that leads us to a state of internal balance and harmony. When we accept our imperfections and wounds, we access an inner strength that allows us to live more fully and consciously. Pain, which initially seemed like a burden, becomes fuel for our evolution. Each emotional scar is a mark of wisdom, and each wound, an opportunity to become more whole. Therefore, real transformation does not occur when we try to eliminate our wounds, but when we learn to live with them consciously, integrating them into our being. This path of self-discovery is not easy, but it is deeply enriching. By connecting with our pain honestly and compassionately, we can release our true essence and achieve a more authentic and fulfilling life. If you want to dive deeper into the healing process and learn more about shadow work, subscribe to our channel and check out our members area, where you will have access to exclusive content to deepen your journey of self-discovery. Together, we can transform pain into wisdom and walk toward a more true and fulfilling life.